A new Afrobarometer survey shows that South Africans' trust in the country's police is at historically low levels. According to the report, public trust in the South African Police Service has declined by about half over the past decade. Ziyanda Sturman, who is a communications coordinator for Southern Africa for the Afrobarometer at Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, joins us now to talk more on this. Ziyanda, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time this evening. Let's talk about this trust deficit. It's not a new thing, and we've seen it, being on a steady decline for the past years now. What would you say is behind this new decline that we are seeing now?
Good evening, Bongiwe. I think that there are multiple factors that are behind this decline in trust in the police, and they run the gamut on quite a few issues. The first is that we've seen that there's weakened efficiency of the police to carry out investigations into crime, particularly around serious crimes such as murder. There's the fact that the police have an enormous budget, which stands at 99 billion rand in 2020, and have almost 190,000 staff on hand. But we've also seen that crime levels have gotten steadily worse and worse over the past few years. Again, running the gamut from sort of murder rates in Cape Town and Port Elizabeth, for example, as well as contact crimes such as mugging, assault, etc., in cities like Johannesburg. And then there's also the added disadvantage of tumultuous leadership changes and challenges, given that since 2000, we've had 7 national police commissioners in South Africa, and 4 of those 7 police commissioners have left the office in scandal after having been accused and charged and even found guilty of fraud, corruption, and dishonest conduct. So we really have many, many issues all contributing to this negative perception of the police, and it is getting worse.
And before we get to the issue of the Office of the National Police Commissioner, because that's a huge one, I'd like to touch on something you've raised, which is around the budget. If the budget is so hefty, what then is stopping management from hiring? Because I know that there was also that standoff when it came to the agreement of the promotions, but at the same time, the hiring of new officers, because we're still quite short of detectives. We're still quite short of, hands and vehicles in police stations. What would you say then the bulk of the money goes to?
At this point, a large chunk of the police budget, the largest part of it, goes towards visible policing. So that's all around training police officers in sort of basic police patrolling. It's vehicles for the police and other sort of personnel or sort of infrastructure issues and solves around visible policing. I think that when we look at the police budget, what we really need to start demanding from both the police minister and the National Police Commissioner is radical accountability. I think that, police budgets are passed in Parliament every year, and there are annual reports that are tabled in Parliament, but we don't actually dig into what that means. And whether that means that the Parliamentary Committee on Police needs to do a much better and more robust job of making the police account for where all of this money is going. We certainly have a misalignment of priorities and of outputs, given also the fact that the Department of, or the unit, for crime intelligence within the SAPS has a budget of 4 billion rand a year, and they very, very clearly failed at their mandate during the July unrest this year. So we have money going to departments and to units who have absolutely no accountability or feel no pressure for accountability.
Definitely something that Parliament really needs to look into. But when we then look at the stability of the Office of the National Commissioner, as you've also alluded to as part of the contributing factors to this trust that is now dropping as we speak, the National Police Commissioner is finding himself having made, in fact, representations to the President as to why he should not be suspended. That in and itself is, of course, having a huge impact, not only in the trust, but the functioning of the police service and the stability of that particular office. Talk to us then about the impact that this has on the image of policing in the country, because even to this particular point, we saw what looked like, some were suggesting were skirmishes between the police commissioner and the minister.
Yeah, all of this comes down to the fact that there is both a perception and reality of political interference, within the police service. And it's at the leadership, the highest leadership levels, but also across multiple functions within the police and across provinces. All of this is incredibly damaging, as it really sort of gives a signal to us as the public that the police between themselves are divided. This also shows in the survey data that we collected this year, where more than half of South Africans, 55%, said that they believe most or all police officers are involved in corruption. Another 36% said that it may be just a few police officers. So what we really have here is this very widespread view that the police service and individual members that are part of it are corrupt. And it doesn't help when you have a situation like this where, as you described, there's a feud and a dispute between the two highest police officials, being the police minister and the national police commissioner. And all of this just leads to disarray and this view that the institution is both dysfunctional but also corrupt.
Now, when one then, looks at what has been playing out in the public domain, others are saying that, the police commissioner is in fact, is really being, not able to do his job freely here, because some are claiming there's political interference. Others are saying that no, he should have, in fact, cooperated with that investigation by IPID into the grabber. But whichever way you look at it, it really does, as you say, signal to an instability in the higher and upper echelons of the SAPS. What will it take for the country to stabilize this particular position and ensure that we don't find ourselves here again? Because should he then find himself with a board of inquiry into his fitness to hold office post this process and then be dismissed, we then are most likely going to have another person. But surely there needs to be some stability here. How do we then, as a country, begin to stabilize this office?
That's a really good question. And I think that overall, in order to have a better functioning police institution, we really actually need a bureaucratic intervention at this point. And that really just means that within the SAPS itself, from the highest operational office, which is the National Police Commissioner, and down all the way to individual stations and police officers, we really need for there to be more competent administrators who are hired, people who understand the operational layout and the institutional memory and function of the SAPS, as well as people who are dedicated to doing the job and not dedicated to a certain faction or aligned to any sort of particular faction. That is going to take bureaucratic intervention, quite literally, I think, from the president, firstly, going far and wide in his search for a new police commissioner, if this board of inquiry does find Sithole unfit to hold office, and to really think about who he puts into that position. That also is, I think, is the same for the police minister, that should be an appointment where it's somebody who is also level-headed and who understands the incredible responsibility that comes with making policy for the police. Our current police commissioner is somebody who likes to engage communities and likes to be out in the field. And that's certainly one part of the job. But another really important part is policy leadership. And I think on that side, he's not necessarily putting his best foot forward. So really, we need people who understand the institution and understand that the mechanics of the institution need to work a certain way in order to allow individual police officers to do their jobs.
One of the disturbing things, Ziyanda, is that all of this is happening at a time when, there's still that backlog when it comes to DNA analysis. There's still quite a lot of backlogs that police are having to deal with, and that doesn't help when there's a trust deficit that continues to widen. There are fights at the top when it comes to policing. There's a police commissioner that is now facing suspension. A lot of what needs to happen on the ground will no doubt suffer, because you can't divorce what's happening in management with what is happening on the ground.
Exactly. I could not have put it better myself. We really can't expect that there is normal function, of this huge institution when the people at the very top of it are fighting to keep their jobs, essentially, or even fighting amongst themselves. So this has the effect of both being really quite destructive to the function of the police service, but also to the morale of again, individual police officers. When you're working in an institution where the sort of highest level of leadership is subject to so many changes, one could feel like there's no real direction and there's no real solid steering of the ship from the very top. So in that sense, I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for police officers who just want to do their job, who feel that they're not able to do so because of leadership. And now on top of this, there's again more and more declines in public trust from the public.
All right, Ziyanda, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Ziyanda Stearman. She's a communications coordinator for Southern Africa for Afrobarometer at Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. We do appreciate your time this evening. When we return, we have a look at how the media has covered political